Welcome back to another episode of Road in Between, the podcast. It's just me this week. We actually have Tom on special assignment. And so I'm in the truck, headed downtown Meridian, headed to the historic Weidmann's restaurant. Weidmann's is the oldest restaurant in the state of Mississippi. And it's actually quite fitting. I'm going to meet a dear friend of mine, Kenny Watts. Kenny and I met probably at Weidmann's. We'll talk about it a little later, but we met at Weidmann's many years ago and formed a friendship. But so this week we're going to be talking to Kenny about he recently had a loved one pass away. His sister had passed away, and we're going to talk about what we do to cope with loss, especially family loss, loved ones. Before we get there, I do want to ask if you like if you like what we're doing, if you like our podcast, then please hit the like button and share it. Tell all your friends what we're doing here with missionscape, but also mainly hit that subscribe button. That does nothing but help us keep our mission going. And the beauty part is it's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you a dime. And I promise you, we're not going to send you all kind of crazy text messages. We won't even inundate your email box. But if you will, just hit like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. So sit back. I hope you enjoyed this week with our chat with Kenny Watts.
Keep running through my head as I walk this road with nothing ahead. The sun beams down on my face as I walk this road that leads to amazing grace.
Welcome back to another episode of Road in Between, the podcast. We are in downtown Meridian, in the historical Weidmann's restaurant, out on the balcony overlooking beautiful downtown Meridian. It's a perfect setting for our conversation today. Kenny Watts, I've got Kenny Watts with me. Kenny is business consultant, longtime business consultant here in town, has purpose-driven solutions. But Kenny and I met not necessarily on this balcony many years ago.
It was close.
But right on the other side of those windows here at Weidmann's, many years ago, we were all working downtown, and we were all actually working towards the revitalization of downtown. And Kenny has been just an instrumental part of that. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. What we want to talk about today, Kenny has graciously decided to share his story. He had a recent loss in his family, your sister.
Right.
And Kenny and his sister was real close. But what's intriguing about the story is actually Kenny's closure with his sister. Right. And I don't want to say anything more. I don't want to put any words in your mouth. Kenny, I just want you to share what you and I had talked about the other day.
Well, it was an experience. As I learned my sister's likelihood of passing, it was very hard. I've got two sisters, and we're all real close. Our childhood was idyllic. Nothing you could have hoped for any better. But when my older sister, we called her Pokey. It's a nickname that my dad assigned to her as a little girl, and she was anything but Pokey. I mean, she moved quick and covered a lot of ground. But she was diagnosed last fall with lung cancer, and it quickly progressed to a brain development and then metastasized into a liver. So her prognosis became pretty dire, pretty quick. My other sister and I were not prepared for this. We were looking forward to years of semi-retirement with her, doing stuff together, and we just didn't get that opportunity. So, but I can't describe it anything. I've decided not to describe it except for the way I experienced the spring.
Yeah.
and in particular this occasion I shared with you. So as I was trying to cope with the probable loss of my sister, and then it became real, I had what I've called a visitation. My doctor buddies say you're not supposed to remember your dreams.
Right.
And so I'm glad I remember this one, although I'm not sure it was a dream. I call it a visitation. So during this time, it was early one morning, kind of in the half light of the morning, I was struck by encountering my dad. Mm. And I was almost certain immediately that's who it was, although he was not real particularly close to me. I could recognize his stature and features.
And how long ago had your dad passed?
He died in 2021.
Okay.
But I knew it was him. It was his mannerism, his stature, what he might typically be wearing and what we were doing. And, it was an event that we would often go participate in together, fishing trips out of setting. Very, very casual, but it was very warm feeling. And in that moment, I realized that it was him, and that coming around from him was my sister, the one who was ill. Mm. And she was in all her youthful health, beautiful. And then it struck me what this was about, was to let me know she's okay. And she was with Dad and family and all the host of family that's there now. And she even hugged me in the experience, which, to let me know, it still strikes me hard to share it.
Understandable.
I can't believe it happened. I got up that morning and immediately was trying to tell Kim and what I experienced, and it was obvious I was caught up in it because I was overwhelmed. But
I'm sure the emotions were still immediately strong.
Oh my gosh! I mean, since I talked to you last about it, I've been able to cope with the loss, but I recognize where she is. I mean, she's in a good place and happy, healthy, and they're probably watching right now trying to figure out why we're doing this. You're not supposed to talk about it. I don't know. I'm sure they're happy that I feel like I can talk about it. So,
well, yeah, it's it's a sense of closure, and there's more books published out there on dreams and why we have the dreams that we have and what are the purposes behind it. You could probably Google even 10,000 times more than that.
Yeah.
But there's really only one book that actually has the true answer. And Paul wrote in the book of Thessalonians, "We who are still alive will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." And that, to me, is a true sense of comfort and closure.
Without question.
That you have with your sister.
She's terribly missed. I mean, look, there's things we'd be doing this weekend, if she were here. But it did help. It really, really helped. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you. I shared, this was before she passed away. Mm-hmm. Not long, but I shared it with my sister, who was in this illness. And she looked at me and said, "Well, that's Daddy coming to get me."
Wow. That's powerful.
And she was very at peace with that. That's what probably made this all work well for me is, okay, she's at peace too.
Yeah.
So, I really would love to have time with her now. But, it's one way I've been able to cope with it.
Well, and just like Paul says, you now can take comfort in where she is. You know where she's at. You know who she's with.
Right.
And that, and I won't go into great detail on mine, but I agree. I hardly ever remember a dream.
Yeah.
But I have two very similar situations. I lost my dad at an early age. I was just a little boy, and there's been a couple of times where I've been visited by my dad in my dreams, and those are really the only dreams I truly remember. So, I totally understand.
Well, I've really decided not to try to analyze it.
Yeah.
Part of me wanted to try to sort it out, and I decided, no, I'm going to let it be what it is.
Yeah.
And what I felt at the time, because it's very real. It's not something there's no way to analyze it and come up with a better feel than what I had to understand it better.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've had that experience with your dad. I mean, it means something, and I'm glad I knew it happened. I'm glad I shared it with my other sister. She was thrilled. And we both agreed, this is a conversation that Grace and I had. Grace Mitch is my sister. You may know Grace. But anyway, we decided that Pokey would be telling us right now, don't waste any time. Just keep going, get busy, get back with it. Don't regret. We got things to do.
Yeah. So
it's energized me in a way. Coming off the last 3 years of so much uncertainty in our culture, it's really helped. So I think it even helped Kim. She recognized what I was feeling, and she said, "This is going to help you." And it has. So.
And it sounds like it has.
It has.
It really does.
Yeah.
Kenny, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us and sharing with us your road in between. And I would say your road right now is between the grief of the loss of your sister and now the comfort of knowing where she's at.
That's it.
So, but thank you so much.
It's reinforced my beliefs that sometimes have been challenged.
Great.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Kenny. Good talking.
Thanks.